Yesterday, the NBA came out with the second half of the NBA schedule for all teams, which includes any games that were postponed, and I suspect some of it will be subject to change based on any additional games that will need to be postponed for the rest of the season. But I wanted to do this video and just reviewing some of the key games, particularly some of the critical games that may determine the Bulls making the playoffs or not, or even the seeding in the Bulls' second half schedule isn't going to be smooth sailing, which I thought probably would happen given how challenging the Bulls' schedule was for January of this year. That maybe we would start seeing it lighten up a bit, but let's take a look at it and let's get into it. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Before I get into the video, just a quick shout out to all of you guys who have been supporting the channel recently and getting it to 3,000 subscribers. I really do greatly appreciate it. As I've mentioned previously, I don't do the whole Patreon thing or membership fees. I don't really believe in taking money from subscribers or viewers when I'm literally just talking about Bulls basketball. It's just a hobby of mine and I enjoy doing it, so subscribing and supporting the channel through engagement is obviously greatly appreciated on my end, so thank you. Feel free to join the Discord server as well. I'll link that down in the description below. But anyway, let's talk about the Bulls and their remaining schedule. So obviously the Bulls are taking on the Suns tomorrow, which will of course be a challenging game. The Suns are one of the surprise teams in the West with the young talent they have in Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton to go along with their veteran leader in Chris Paul. Now overall, the Bulls have 41 games remaining, and it's important to note that at the time of this recording, the Bulls are only a half game out from the 4 seed in the East, currently sitting 6th, and just 1.5 games out from being 11th on the other end. So there's a very slim margin of error in the Eastern Conference, which is why in reality, every game is very critical here. The way that things have been shaping out in the East have been pretty unusual, to say the least. If you saw one of my videos prior to the start of the season, you probably remember that when predicting the East standings, I assumed all the teams in the East that made the playoffs last year would do so this season, with the exception of the Orlando Magic, who I predicted the Bulls would replace. And as of right now, we see the Celtics sitting at 9th, the Heat had a slow start and they're at 8th, and the Hornets have been, better than expected. They have the same record as the Bulls right now. I actually thought they were going to be struggling this year. But in any event, we can expect that things are going to switch and shift around all over the place throughout the remainder of the season. And as for the Bulls' schedule, I think the thing that pops out to me the most is the little rest time between games. I mean, even to start off their games coming back from the All-Star break beginning on March 11th, the Bulls have 3 games in 4 nights and against tough teams as well. They're starting off with the Sixers, followed up by the Miami Heat the following evening, and then 1 night off, and then playing the Raptors on the 14th. They then have another day off, and then they go back-to-back against Oklahoma City Thunder and San Antonio on the 16th and 17th. So really 5 games in the span of a week. My only concern there is really just the risk to injury to players when they're playing that often with little rest in between, but we'll have to take it as it comes. I really do wish the NBA would space this out a bit more. I understand they're trying to move things along quickly given the fact that the season was delayed due to the pandemic, but still you have to be mindful of the players, right, and the injury risks that you pose, that you're potentially exposing them to. But anyway, the Bulls are a young team and hopefully it won't impact them. But looking at the schedule overall, the final games are packed with a lot of challenging opponents, and they'll face some of the best teams in the league. So they got the Utah Jazz twice. They'll be playing the defending East champs and the Miami Heat 3 times. They'll be taking on the Bucks. They're also playing the Nets, who we have yet to see so far this season, and then also the Celtics as well, one of which was one of the games that was postponed earlier. Now the challenge for the Bulls is, I'm assuming all of these East teams between spots 5 through 12 are really going to be fighting for seeding and a playoff spot in those final games. And the Bulls are playing the Nets in 2 of their final 4 games. However, we'll see if the Nets start resting their players by then, because sometimes good teams do that and they just want to rest their players going into the playoffs. I'm sure Kyrie, who just decides what games he plays in and what not to, he'll take those games off. But either way, closing out the season against formidable opponents could determine the Bulls' fate in making the playoffs or not, or at least the play-in game for that matter. That being said, I will say April is looking relatively easy for the Bulls. Of the 16 games that month, you've got us going against some easier teams like the Hawks, Magic, Cavs, the Hornets, Knicks, which hopefully the Bulls will take advantage of and treat it as an opportunity to create some separation in the East. So then, as they start closing out the season in May against the more challenging teams, the Bulls will already be well positioned to not lose a potential playoff spot. Granted, it's the NBA, these are all professional basketball teams. Any night is potentially going to be a difficult game, no matter what team you're playing. A lot of it just depends on how much the Bulls play to their level of competition. I mean, we saw that, in a way, last night's game. They're playing the worst team in the league in the Timberwolves. There have been instances of the Bulls playing down or up to their competition. I think just taking care of the teams who are struggling or rebuilding, and that will ensure getting a good standing in the playoffs. The Bulls do have 2 nationally televised games, which is good to see. Both games on ESPN, one game against the Knicks and the other against the Celtics. I don't know about you guys, but as a Bulls fan, I got pretty used to seeing the Bulls play on national TV often prior to when they traded Jimmy Butler, so it's good to see the Bulls get more exposure on a national level to display their talent. It's little things like that that enable them to show what they're capable of and attract other free agents. Hopefully the Bulls will be able to show up well for those 2 games and display themselves in a high regard. Overall, it's going to be fun and an interesting remainder of the end of the season. Probably going to be a lot of stressful games, as this Bulls team likes to keep us fans on our toes, even when we think victory is imminent. In any event, I'll keep uploading videos regularly for you guys to keep content coming. I'll continue the live chats as well for each of the individual games, mailbags, weekly hot takes videos, all of that good stuff. So as always, be sure to subscribe if that's something that you are all interested in, especially if you're a hardcore Bulls fan like myself. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.